You just make it awkward for everyone. My mother's voice cut through the kitchen like a blade, her words delivered with that practiced coldness she'd perfected over the years. I stood there holding my coffee mug, watching steam rise from the dark liquid while she continued arranging flowers for what felt like the Hunt centerpiece discussion this month. I completely understand, I replied, setting the mug down with deliberate calm. My name is Sophia and I'm 27 years old. I work as a freelance photographer in Portland, Oregon, specializing in destination weddings and editorial shoots. My work has taken me to incredible places around the world, capturing moments of pure joy and love for couples who trust me with their most precious memories. What makes this conversation particularly bitter is that I've photographed over 200 weddings, but I won't be attending my own sister's. Good, my mother said, not bothering to look up from her flowers. Elena's day needs to be perfect, and you know how you can be sometimes. How I can be sometimes. That phrase had followed me through childhood, adolescence, and apparently into my adult life. It was code for being too tall, too opinionated, too successful, or too anything that might overshadow my younger sister, Elena. At 24, Elena had always been the family's golden child. She was petite where I was tall, soft-spoken where I was direct, and most importantly, she'd chosen the right kind of life according to my parents. Elenina was marrying Bradley, a real estate agent she'd met through friends. Their wedding was planned for a beachfront resort in Miami, complete with 200 guests, a string quartet, and enough white roses to fill a greenhouse. Every detail had been discussed endlessly at Sunday dinners, from the shade of ivory in her dress to the flavor profile of the 7-course dinner. The guest list is already so tight, my mother continued, finally glancing at me with those pale blue eyes that had never quite seemed to see me properly. Elena really wanted to include some of Bradley's college friends, and you know how these venues are about numbers. I nodded again, though we both knew this wasn't about venue capacity. This was about the same pattern that had defined my relationship with my family for as long as I could remember. When Elena graduated high school, I was asked not to bring up my photography scholarship because it might make her feel bad about her grades. When she got engaged, I was told to keep my own relationship with Lucas quiet because she needed time to be the center of attention. Lucas. Just thinking about him made my chest warm in a way that had nothing to do with the coffee. We'd been together for 3 years, having met when I photographed his sister's wedding in Barcelona. He was a cinematographer and documentary filmmaker, splitting his time between Los Angeles and wherever his projects took him around the world. My family had met him exactly twice, both times treating him with the kind of polite disinterest they reserved for my career achievements. When is Elena's wedding again? I asked, though I knew the answer perfectly well. October 15th. The ceremony starts at 4, and we're doing photographs on the beach at sunset. My mother's voice softened when she talked about Elena's plans, the way it never did when discussing my work. She's going to look absolutely stunning. Bradley's grandmother is letting her wear the family pearls. October 15th. I filed that date away carefully, though for reasons my mother couldn't imagine. That sounds beautiful, I said, and meant it. Despite everything, I wanted Elena to be happy. The problem wasn't my sister herself, but the way my family had created this dynamic where only one of us could shine at a time, and it was never my turn. My phone buzzed with a text from Lucas. Coffee meeting went great. Milano confirmed for October. Everything still good on your end? I smiled, typing back quickly. Perfect timing. Just had an interesting conversation with my mother. The wedding is going to be photographed by someone from the resort, my mother said, pulling me back to the conversation. They do beautiful work, very traditional and elegant. Traditional and elegant, unlike my style, which had been described in magazines as bold, cinematic, and emotionally raw. I specialized in capturing the moments between moments, the tears of joy when nobody was supposed to be looking, the spontaneous laughter during formal poses. My portfolio had been featured in several international publications, and I'd been booked solid for the past 2 years. I'm sure they'll do a lovely job, I said. My mother finally looked at me directly, studying my face as if searching for signs of the drama she expected. "You're taking this very well. I was worried you might make a scene." Make a scene. There it was again. That assumption that my natural response to disappointment would be some kind of theatrical outburst. I'd learned years ago that reacting emotionally to my family's decisions only reinforced their belief that I was too dramatic, too sensitive, too much. Why would I make a scene? Elena deserves to have exactly the wedding she wants with exactly the people she wants there. Something flickered across my mother's face, almost like surprise. She'd been prepared for tears, arguments, or pleading. My calm acceptance seemed to unsettle her more than anger would have. "Well, good. I'm glad you understand." I picked up my coffee mug and headed toward the door. "I should get going. I have a client call in an hour." "Another wedding?" she asked, and I could hear the faint dismissal in her tone. "Actually, yes, a very special one." That evening, I sat on my apartment balcony with Lucas on video call, watching the sunset paint Portland's skyline in shades of gold and pink. He was in his hotel room in Milan, the city lights twinkling behind him as he explained the logistics of his latest documentary project. "So, we're definitely cleared for filming at the villa?" I asked. "Absolutely. Yeppy is thrilled to host us. He says October is the perfect time for the lighting you want." Lucas leaned back in his chair, that familiar smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Are you sure about this, love? It's a big step." I thought about my mother's words, about the decades of being made to feel like I was too much, too inconvenient, too awkward for the family narrative. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The weeks following that conversation with my mother passed in a blur of careful planning and quiet preparation. I went about my regular routine, photographing an engagement session in Mount Hood, editing photos for clients, and having dinner with my parents every Sunday as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed in ways they couldn't possibly imagine. "Have you thought about what you'll do during Elena's wedding?" my father asked over dinner one Sunday evening. He was cutting his steak with the same methodical precision he applied to everything in his life as an accountant. "Maybe take a little vacation. You work so much." My father, Daniel, had always been the gentler of my two parents, though gentle was relative when it came to the family dynamics. He didn't actively exclude me the way my mother did, but he also never challenged her decisions. He was a man who valued peace above fairness, which meant I'd learned early not to expect him to take my side when conflicts arose. "Actually, I am planning a little getaway," I said, twirling pasta around my fork. "Lucas and I are thinking about Europe." "That's nice, dear," my mother said without looking up from her plate. "Just don't post too much on social media during Elena's wedding weekend. We don't want it to look like you're trying to upstage her big day." Elena, who had been unusually quiet during dinner, finally spoke up. "Mom, Sophia can post whatever she wants on her own social media." I looked at my sister with surprise. Elena rarely pushed back against our mother's pronouncements, especially when they involved maintaining her position as the family favorite. "Thank you," I said quietly. Elenina met my eyes across the table, and for a moment, I saw something that looked almost like guilt. We'd been close as children before the favoritism became so pronounced, before every achievement of mine became a threat to her specialness. Sometimes I wondered if she missed that closeness, too. "I just think everyone should be able to enjoy their own life," Elena said, then quickly returned to her dinner. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't respond directly. Instead, she launched into a detailed description of the floral arrangements for the wedding, complete with Latin names for various exotic blooms. I listened with half an ear, my mind drifting to the very different plans Lucas and I had been making. Over the past 3 weeks, we'd had numerous video calls with Yeppy, the owner of a stunning villa in the hills outside Palermo, Sicily. The property had been in his family for generations, with terrace gardens that overlooked the Mediterranean Sea and architecture that told stories of centuries past. Yeppy himself was a retired film director who now rented his home for special events, and he'd been immediately enchanted by our project. The light in October is magical, he told us during our first conversation, his English heavily accented but clear. Golden hour lasts forever and the garden will still have late roses blooming. You will create something beautiful here. Beautiful was an understatement. The villa was a dreamscape of ancient stone walls covered in climbing jasmine, terraces lined with olive trees and views that stretched endlessly over turquoise water. It was the kind of place that existed in fairy tales and high-end travel magazines, completely different from anything my family could imagine. Sophia, are you listening? My mother's sharp voice cut through my reverie. Sorry, what? I was asking if you needed us to recommend a hotel in Miami for your getaway. Since you'll be traveling that weekend anyway, you might as well go somewhere nice. The irony was almost too perfect to bear. That's thoughtful, but we're not going to Miami. Oh, where are you thinking? Italy. Sicily specifically. I kept my voice casual though my heart was racing. Lucas has some work there and I've always wanted to see Palermo. My father perked up with interest. Sicily. That sounds fascinating. I read an article about the food scene there in National Geographic. The photography opportunities should be incredible. I said, ancient architecture, Mediterranean light, dramatic landscapes. It's exactly the kind of setting that makes for memorable images. Elena was watching me curiously now, as if sensing there was more to my plans than a simple vacation. She'd always been perceptive, even when we were kids. It was one of the things I'd missed about our relationship. How long will you be there? She asked. Just a few days. We fly out October 13th, back on the 18th, October 13th, 2 days before Elena's wedding. The timing wasn't coincidental, though my family didn't need to know that. After dinner, Elena walked me to my car, something she rarely did anymore. The evening air was crisp with the first hint of autumn, and the street lights cast long shadows across the suburban driveway where I'd learned to drive, where we played countless games of basketball as kids. Sophia, she said as I unlocked my car door. Are you okay about the wedding, I mean? I turned to face her, studying the expression on her face. Elena had inherited my mother's delicate features and my father's kind eyes, but right now she looked troubled. I'm fine, I said honestly. I want you to have the perfect day you've always dreamed of. But don't you think it's unfair? Mom not inviting you? The question surprised me. Eleonina had never acknowledged the family dynamic so directly before. It's her decision, I said carefully. And yours? If you really wanted me there, I would be there. Eleonina looked down at her feet, scuffing her shoe against the pavement in a gesture that reminded me of when we were children. It's complicated. I know. Mom thinks you'd overshadow me. She says you can't help being the center of attention even when you're not trying to be. The word stung, even though I'd heard variations of them my entire life. And what do you think? Elena was quiet for a long moment, the weight of honesty hanging between us. I think you're incredibly talented and successful, and sometimes that makes me feel small, but that's my problem, not yours. It was the most honest conversation we'd had in years, maybe ever. I reached out and squeezed her hand. You're going to be a beautiful bride, Elena, and Bradley is lucky to have you. She squeezed back, then let go. Have a wonderful time in Italy. As I drove home through the quiet Portland streets, I thought about that moment of connection with my sister and felt a pang of something that might have been regret. But then I remembered my mother's casual cruelty. The decades of being made to feel like I was too much for my own family, and my resolve solidified once again. October 13th couldn't come soon enough. The morning of October 10th, I was in my studio editing photos from a recent shoot when my phone rang. Elena's name appeared on the screen, which was unusual since she rarely called me directly anymore. Hey, I answered, setting down my coffee cup. Sophia, I need to ask you something and I need you to be completely honest with me. Her voice sounded strained, almost panicked. I could hear traffic in the background as if she was calling from her car. What's wrong? Are you getting married in Italy? The question hit me like a physical blow. I sat back in my chair, mind racing. There was no way she could know. We'd been incredibly careful about our planning, keeping everything private between Lucas Yeppy and the small team of vendors we'd hired in Sicily. What makes you ask that? Sophia, please just answer me. I could hear the desperation in her voice, and despite everything, she was still my sister. But I also knew that anything I told Elena would likely make its way back to my parents, and our plan depended on secrecy until the right moment. Why would you think that? Because Jessica's cousin works at the Italian consulate and she saw your name on a marriage license application for Palermo. She mentioned it to Jessica, who mentioned it to Mom's friend Carol, who told Mom. Now Mom is completely losing her mind. My heart stopped. Jessica was Elena's maid of honor, and apparently our attempt at privacy hadn't been as foolproof as we'd thought. I should have anticipated that getting married abroad would involve paperwork that could be traced. But I'd been so focused on the emotional aspects of our plan that I hadn't considered every practical detail. Elena, are you seriously getting married the same weekend as my wedding? Her voice rose to a pitch I hadn't heard since we were teenagers fighting over clothes. Were you planning to tell us at all? I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the moment. We'd hoped to keep everything quiet until after the fact, to share the news and the beautiful photos as a done deal, rather than giving my family the chance to interfere or make demands. But now that Elena knew or suspected, I had to make a choice about how much to reveal. Yes, I said quietly. We're getting married in Sicily on October 15th. The silence on the other end of the phone stretched so long I thought she might have hung up. The same day as my wedding. Yes. Why? The word came out as barely a whisper. I took a deep breath, knowing that whatever I said next would either repair something between us or destroy it completely. Because for the first time in my life, I wanted to do something that was entirely about me and Lucas without having to worry about whether it would upset the family dynamic or make anyone else uncomfortable. But you knew it was my wedding day. Elena, you made it very clear that my presence would be awkward for everyone. So, I decided to create my own day instead of sitting at home feeling sorry for myself. I could hear her breathing heavily and then what sounded like a sob. Mom is going to kill me. She thinks I knew and didn't tell her. She's been calling and texting non-stop for the past hour, demanding to know if we're all being played by you. The phrase being played by you was so perfectly my mother that I almost laughed. Even when I was making the biggest commitment of my life, it had to be framed as some kind of manipulation designed to hurt them. You can tell Mom that this has nothing to do with her or your wedding. Lucas and I have been planning this for months. We chose Sicily because it's meaningful to us. Not because I wanted to upstage anyone. But the same day, Sophia, out of all the days in the year. You chose the exact same day. She had a point. And I'd known this confrontation would come eventually. The truth was choosing October 15th had been partly practical and partly petty. Yeppy's villa had limited availability and the October dates that worked for both our schedules and his were the 13th, 15th, and 17th. The 15th offered the best light and weather conditions, but I'd also chosen it because I was tired of my life being scheduled around Elena's milestones, tired of waiting for the family coast to be clear before I could have my own moments. The villa was only available on certain dates and October 15th was the best option for what we wanted, I said, which was technically true. This is insane. Do you have any idea what you're doing to the family? What am I doing to the family, Elena? Having a private wedding ceremony with the man I love? You know, that's not what I mean. But it was exactly what I meant. And the fact that she couldn't see the difference was part of the problem. In my family's worldview, my choices existed only in relation to their impact on Elena and my parents. The idea that I might make a decision based purely on what Lucas and I wanted was apparently incomprehensible. Look, I said, trying to keep my voice gentle. I'm not trying to hurt anyone. We're having a small private ceremony with just us and a few close friends who can make the trip. We weren't planning to announce it until afterward, precisely because I didn't want it to interfere with your day. A few close friends. Who? Some photographer friends from Los Angeles. Lucas's sister and her husband. Maybe 2 or 3 other people. Nothing that would take away from your celebration. Elena was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was smaller, more uncertain. Are you inviting anyone from the family? The question I'd been dreading. The honest answer was no. We weren't planning to invite anyone from my family. Partly for logistical reasons, but mostly because I knew they would find ways to make it about Elena's wedding instead of about Lucas and me. But saying that out loud would confirm Elena's worst fears about my intentions. We're keeping it very intimate, I said carefully. Immediate family only. It wasn't technically a lie since Lucas's sister counted as immediate family to him, but I could tell Elena heard what I wasn't saying. So, you're not inviting Mom and Dad? Elena or me? The hurt in her voice was unmistakable, and I felt a stab of guilt. Despite everything, despite the years of being marginalized and excluded, I didn't actually want to hurt my sister. I wanted to have my beautiful day without interference, but I didn't want Elena to feel rejected the way I had. It's not about not wanting you there, I said slowly. It's about needing something that's just ours without all the family drama and expectations. But we are your family, Sophia. Whatever problems we have, we're still your family. Are we? The question slipped out before I could stop it because for the past month it's been made very clear that my presence at your wedding would be an inconvenience at best. Elena was quiet again and I could practically hear her processing the implications of what I'd said. This is going to destroy everything, she said finally. Or maybe it will be the push we all need to finally be honest about how we treat each other. But even as I said it, I knew Elena was probably right. My wedding in Sicily was going to detonate whatever fragile piece existed in our family dynamics. The question was whether anything worth saving would remain afterward. Within hours of my conversation with Elena, my phone was ringing non-stop. First, my mother, her voice reaching decibel levels I hadn't heard since I was 16 and came home past curfew. Then my father, disappointment radiating through his careful measured words. Then Elenina again, now crying and asking if there was any way to change our date. Finally, my mother's sister, Patricia, who rarely called me, but apparently felt this family crisis required her intervention. I let most of the calls go to voicemail. The messages they left painted a clear picture of the chaos my wedding announcement had unleashed. My mother alternated between fury and hurt, demanding to know how I could be so selfish, how I could deliberately sabotage Elena's special day. My father focused on the practical implications, wondering about guests who might be confused, family members who might feel forced to choose between celebrations. Elena's messages were the hardest to listen to. Her voice breaking as she asked if I hated her enough to ruin the day she'd been planning for 2 years. But it was Patricia's message that revealed the true depth of the family meltdown. Sophia, honey, you need to call me back. Your mother is having what I can only describe as a complete breakdown. She's convinced you planned this whole thing as revenge for not being invited to Elena's wedding, and she's talking about calling off the Miami ceremony entirely. Elena is hysterical. Bridesmaid dress appointments are being cancelled. Vendors are being questioned about whether they can change dates. You need to fix this, sweetie. Whatever point you're trying to make, you've made it. Now, please, for the love of God, fix this. I saved that message and played it for Lucas when we had our nightly video call. He listened with the same expression he wore when watching particularly absurd reality television, a mixture of disbelief and fascination. Your family is genuinely melting down because we're getting married on a different continent on the same day as your sister, he asked. Apparently. So, Lucas was quiet for a moment, his face thoughtful in the blue light of his laptop screen. Behind him, I could see the lights of Milan twinkling through his hotel window. He'd been there for the past week, finalizing details for his documentary and coordinating with Jusp about our wedding logistics. Do you want to change the date? He asked finally. I mean, if it would make peace with your family. Yeppy has the 17th available, too. I loved him for asking, even though we both knew what my answer would be. The 17th would mean compromising on the lighting and weather conditions we wanted, but more than that, it would mean backing down from the first decision I'd ever made that prioritized my happiness over my family's comfort. No. I said firmly. We're not changing anything. Good. Lucas smiled. Because I already ordered your wedding dress and Yeppy has been planning the most incredible setup in the garden. Also, my sister is flying in from Barcelona with her kids and they're already excited about their first trip to Sicily. My wedding dress. In all the chaos with my family, I'd almost forgotten about that particular surprise. Most brides spend months agonizing over their dress, trying on dozens of options and involving their mothers and sisters in the decision. I'd ordered mine online from a designer in Rome after a single video consultation based entirely on photographs and my own measurements. It was a risk, but it felt appropriate somehow. This whole wedding was about trusting my own instincts instead of deferring to family opinion. How did the final location scouting go? I asked, changing the subject away from my family drama. Lucas's face lit up the way it always did when he talked about his work. Sophia, wait until you see what Yeppy has planned. Remember that terrace we liked from the photos? The one with the stone archway and the view of the sea? Of course. He's been working with a local florist to create what he calls natural elegance. Olive branches and Mediterranean herbs, white roses and jasmine, but arranged to look like they're growing wild. And he found these antique brass lanterns from a monastery that closed in the 18th century. When the sun sets behind us, the whole terrace will be lit like something from a dream. I closed my eyes, trying to picture it. After spending years photographing other people's weddings, I developed strong opinions about what made ceremonies truly beautiful versus merely expensive. The best weddings I'd captured had always been the ones where every detail reflected something genuine about the couple, where the setting and the celebration felt authentic to who they were as people. It sounds perfect. Joseph also wants to document everything himself, not professionally, just with his old film camera. He says, every love story deserves to be preserved, and the villa has been witness to too many beautiful moments not to capture one more. Yeppy's enthusiasm for our wedding had been one of the unexpected joys of this process. When we'd first contacted him about renting the villa, I'd been prepared for the usual vendor interactions, professional, but impersonal. Instead, we'd found someone who seemed genuinely invested in creating magic for us. His emails were full of suggestions for local traditions we might want to incorporate, recommendations for the best olive oil and wine from nearby producers, stories about other couples who'd married at the villa over the years. Has he mentioned anything about the photography setup we discussed? Everything's confirmed. The local crew he recommended seems fantastic and they understand your vision completely. Natural light, candid moments, emphasis on the landscape, and the intimacy of the ceremony rather than formal poses. This was another way our wedding was different from Elena's elaborate Miami affair. Instead of hiring a traditional wedding photographer, we decided that Lucas would handle filming, while a local crew I'd connected with through professional networks would capture still images. The goal was documentation that felt more like fine art than typical wedding photography. Images that would tell the story of the day rather than just recording its events. My phone buzzed with another text from Elena. Please call me back. We need to talk about this. I showed Lucas the message and he sighed. You know, you're going to have to deal with this eventually. I know. I just need a little more time to think about what I want to say. The truth was, I'd been avoiding my family's calls, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew exactly what would happen once I engaged with their panic. They would demand explanations, compromises, changes to our plans that would make them more comfortable. My mother would cry. Elena would guilt me about ruining her dreams. And my father would suggest family therapy or cooling off periods or some other attempt to manage the conflict rather than address its root causes. What if? Lucas said slowly. We just let them be upset. What do you mean? I mean, what if we acknowledge that they're hurt and angry, but we don't let that change our plans? What if we have our beautiful wedding in Sicily and we share it with the world afterward and we let the family drama be their problem to solve? It was a radical thought, at least for someone raised in my family's ecosystem of careful emotional management. I'd been trained from childhood to monitor everyone else's feelings, to adjust my behavior to keep the peace, to make myself smaller whenever my presence threatened the family's equilibrium. They'll never forgive me. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But Sophia, you've spent 27 years trying to earn their approval. And where has it gotten you? You weren't even invited to your own sister's wedding. He was right, of course. And somewhere beneath the guilt and anxiety about my family's reaction, I felt a growing excitement about our plans that had nothing to do with revenge or proving points. I was going to marry the man I loved in one of the most beautiful places on earth, surrounded by people who actually wanted to be there. Whatever chaos that decision created for my family was honestly secondary to the joy of that fact. Okay, I said, let them be upset. Really? Really? We're getting married in Sicily on October 15th and it's going to be perfect. Lucas grinned and I felt some of the tension I'd been carrying since Elena's phone call finally start to ease. Yeppy is going to be so happy. He's been worrying that the family drama might make you want to cancel. Never. If anything, it's making me more determined to have exactly the wedding we want. After we hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my balcony looking out over Portland's evening skyline. In 5 days, I'd be on a plane to Sicily. In 6 days, I'd be married to Lucas in Yeppy's garden while my family attended Elena's beach wedding in Miami. The thought should have made me sad, or at least conflicted. Instead, it filled me with the kind of anticipation I hadn't felt in years. For the first time in my adult life, I was about to do something entirely for myself without compromise or apology. My phone buzzed with one more text from Elena. I love you even if I don't understand this. I typed back, I love you, too. Have the most beautiful wedding day. And I meant it. Despite everything, I wanted Elena to be happy. I just refused to sacrifice my own happiness to guarantee hers. The flight to Rome was 11 hours of forced stillness that gave me too much time to think. Lucas met me at Fiumicino Airport with his camera bag slung over one shoulder and the biggest smile I'd seen in weeks. After 2 months of video calls and careful planning from different continents, having him solid and real in front of me felt like coming home. How are you holding up? He asked as we waited for our connection to Palermo, his arm around my shoulders in the busy terminal. Better now that I'm here with you. It was true. The past few days in Portland had been a barrage of increasingly desperate calls from my family. My mother had escalated from anger to bargaining, offering to add me to Elena's guest list at the last minute if I would just cancel my plans. Elena had tried guilt, reminding me of all the family traditions I was breaking. My father had attempted logic, laying out practical concerns about the cost and complexity of having 2 family weddings on the same day. I'd listened to all of it with growing determination to see our original plan through. Any final family drama before you left? Lucas asked. My mother showed up at my apartment yesterday morning at 7 a.m. with coffee and pastries, trying one last time to convince me to postpone. What did you tell her? That I'd see her when we got back, and that I hoped Elena's wedding was everything she'd dreamed of. Lucas squeezed my shoulder. You're handling this with way more grace than I would. The truth was, I didn't feel graceful. I felt exhausted by the emotional manipulation, frustrated by my family's inability to see beyond their own narrative, and increasingly angry about the years I'd spent accommodating their dysfunction. But I also felt something new, a sense of clarity about what I wanted my life to look like going forward. Our flight to Palermo was delayed by an hour, which meant we didn't reach the villa until after sunset. But even in the gathering darkness, the property was magical. Yeppy met us at the iron gates with a lantern like something from a fairy tale and led us up the winding stone path to the main house. Welcome, welcome, he said, embracing us both with the warmth that had made his emails so endearing. You must be exhausted, but tomorrow you will see everything in proper light. Tonight we eat and rest. The villa was even more stunning than the photographs had suggested. Ancient stone walls held the warmth of the day, and every window looked out onto terrace gardens that seemed to tumble down toward the sea. Joseph had prepared a simple dinner of local cheese, olives, bread, and wine that tasted like sunshine. We ate on a terrace lit by candles, listening to the distant sound of waves and the night songs of crickets. "Tomorrow the florist comes early to begin the arrangements," Jeppy told us over wine. "And your photographer friends arrive at noon." "Yes, everything is prepared." "Thank you for making this so special for us," I said. "I know it's been more complicated than usual with all the coordination from different countries." Jeppy waved a dismissive hand. "Love is never complicated. Sometimes families are complicated, but love itself is simple. You two love each other. You want to marry. You want to do it somewhere beautiful. This is not complicated." His matter-of-fact assessment of our situation was exactly what I needed to hear. After weeks of family drama that had made our wedding feel like an act of rebellion or revenge, Joseph's perspective reminded me that at its core, this was just about Lucas and me making a commitment to each other. The next morning, October 14th, I woke to sunlight streaming through the bedroom windows and the sound of Italian voices in the garden below. Joseph was directing the florist and her assistants as they transformed the terrace into something from a dream. I watched from the window as they would jasmine through the stone archway and arranged clusters of white roses among olive branches, creating exactly the natural elegance Lucas had described. "Good morning, beautiful bride," Lucas said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Good morning, handsome groom." We had breakfast on our private balcony overlooking the Mediterranean. The water was the most incredible shade of turquoise I'd ever seen, and the morning light made everything look painted in gold. I understood why Jeppy had been so confident about the October timing. The light was indeed magical. "Any regrets?" Lucas asked, though his tone suggested he knew the answer. "None. You only that we didn't do this sooner." Around noon, our friends began arriving. Marcus and Jenna, photographer friends from Los Angeles who had flown in specifically for our wedding. Isabella, Lucas's sister, with her husband Carlos and their 2 young children. David, a filmmaker friend of Lucas's who had offered to help with documentation. Each arrival felt like a small celebration, reminders of the community we'd built based on shared interests and genuine affection rather than family obligation. Sophia. Isabella embraced me warmly, speaking in the mixture of Spanish and English that characterized all her conversations. "This place is incredible. Jeppy has been showing us around, and I think I might never leave Sicily." Isabella and I had bonded immediately when we first met 3 years ago. She was everything I'd always wanted in a sister. Supportive, funny, interested in my work, and completely free of competitive dynamics. Watching her children run through Jeppy's garden, their laughter echoing off the ancient stone walls, I felt a pang of sadness about what I was missing with my own family, but only a pang. By the time the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, I was entirely focused on the magic of the moment we'd created. Jeppy had outdone himself with the ceremony setup. The terrace was transformed into an intimate amphitheater with chairs arranged in a small semicircle facing the stone archway where Lucas and I would exchange vows. The brass lanterns he'd found cast a warm glow over everything, and the scent of jasmine and rosemary filled the evening air. "Are you ready for this?" Marcus asked as he checked his camera settings one final time. I looked at Lucas, handsome in his simple navy suit, standing beneath the archway with the Mediterranean sunset behind him. I looked at our small group of friends, all of whom had traveled halfway around the world to celebrate with us. I looked at Jeppy, beaming with pride at what he'd helped create. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. As I walked toward the archway in my simple silk dress, carrying a bouquet of herbs and white roses that smelled like the garden itself, I felt something I'd never experienced at any of the hundreds of weddings I'd photographed. Complete presence in the moment, untainted by anxiety about anyone else's expectations or reactions. The ceremony itself was brief and perfect. Lucas and I had written our own vows, simple promises about supporting each other's dreams and choosing love even when things got complicated. Joseph, who had been ordained online specifically so he could marry us, spoke about the villa's long history of witnessing love stories and how honored he was to add ours to that legacy. When we kissed as husband and wife, with the sunset blazing behind us and our chosen family cheering, I felt something shift in my understanding of what happiness could look like. We were married in defiance of my family's expectations on the same day as Elena's Miami wedding in one of the most beautiful places on earth. And I had never been happier. The celebration that followed our ceremony was everything a wedding reception should be. Intimate, joyful, and completely authentic to who Lucas and I were as a couple. Josep had arranged for a local chef to prepare a feast using ingredients grown on the property, and we ate by candlelight on the main terrace, while a guitarist played traditional Sicilian songs. To Sophia and Lucas, Isabella raised her glass of local wine for choosing love over convention, beauty over politics, and Sicily over Miami. Everyone laughed and cheered, though I noticed Marcus glancing at his phone with a slight frown. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just checking the upload progress. The photos are taking forever on this Wi-Fi connection." Marcus had been documenting our entire wedding day. Not just the ceremony, but all the small moments. Getting ready in our room overlooking the sea. Yeppy presenting us with a bottle of olive oil from his own trees. The children playing in the garden while adults shared stories over wine. True to his artistic sensibilities, he'd captured everything with the golden hour lighting and cinematic composition that had made him one of the most sought-after wedding photographers in Los Angeles. "There's no rush," I said. "We have all the time in the world." But even as I said it, I was curious about the photos myself. After years of being behind the camera at other people's weddings, seeing my own day through Marcus' lens felt surreal and wonderful. "Actually," Lucas said, pulling out his own phone. "There might be a little bit of a rush." He showed me his screen, which displayed a text from his documentary producer. "Saw the Instagram stories from Sicily. When you get back, we need to talk about a potential project. This looks incredible." "He shared some photos already," I asked. "Just a few on Instagram. Nothing major." I pulled out my own phone, which I'd barely looked at since arriving in Sicily. My Instagram notification count was higher than I'd ever seen it. 8947 likes on a photo I didn't remember posting. When I opened the app, I realized Lucas had shared several images to my account throughout the day, with my permission given earlier, but forgotten in the joy of the celebration. The photos were breathtaking. One showed me walking toward the ceremony archway, my dress flowing in the evening breeze with the Mediterranean sunset, creating a halo effect behind me. Another captured Lucas and me during our vows, both of us laughing at something Yeppy had said. Pure happiness evident on our faces. A third showed our small group raising glasses in toast. The villa's ancient stone walls and trailing jasmine creating a backdrop that looked too beautiful to be real. But it was the comments that made me pause. Hundreds of them from photographer colleagues and friends, but also from people I didn't recognize. "This is the most beautiful wedding I've ever seen. Where is this place? I need to get married here immediately. The light in these photos is incredible. Sicily looks like a fairy tale. I've been following your work for years, but these personal photos are your masterpiece. Wait, is this the same weekend as your sister's wedding? Didn't you mention that drama?" That last comment made my stomach drop. I scrolled through more responses, realizing that several people were connecting my Sicily wedding to the family situation I'd mentioned in passing during previous posts. "Oh, no." I whispered. "What?" Lucas looked concerned. Before I could answer, my phone started buzzing with a call from Elena. I declined it, but within seconds, she was calling again. "I should probably take this," I said, stepping away from the group. "Sophia." Elena's voice was tight with an emotion I couldn't identify. "What the hell is happening on your Instagram? What do you mean?" I mean, your wedding photos have been shared by like 50 different photography accounts. People are reposting them everywhere, and some blogger just posted an article called "The Most Romantic Wedding in Sicily" with all your pictures. I felt the blood drain from my face. A blogger? Wedding inspiration accounts are going crazy over your photos. That picture of you walking toward Lucas with the sunset behind you has been shared like 1,000 times in the past hour. This wasn't supposed to happen. We'd planned to share some photos after we returned from our honeymoon, but quietly, privately, with family and close friends. The idea that our intimate ceremony was somehow going viral hadn't occurred to me. Elena, I need to call you back. No, wait. Mom is losing her mind. She's been getting calls from people asking about your wedding, and she didn't even know the photos existed. Aunt Patricia saw them shared in some wedding Facebook group and called Mom crying because she thought she'd missed some big family celebration. I can explain. People are asking me why I wasn't at my own sister's wedding. Do you understand what this is doing to our family? Before I could respond, Elena hung up. I stared at my phone, watching as the notification count continued climbing. My Instagram followers had jumped from 3,000 to over 15,000 in the space of a few hours. Everything all right? Yeppy appeared at my elbow with a concerned expression. I think our photos are spreading more widely than we expected. Ah, yes. Marcus showed me. The Italian Tourism Board has already shared one on their Facebook page. They love when Sicily looks this romantic. The Italian Tourism Board. I opened Facebook and found the post. Yeppy mentioned our photo from the ceremony with a caption in Italian and English about Sicily being the perfect destination for couples seeking magic and beauty. It had been shared 200 times and had hundreds of comments in multiple languages. I walked back to the group, my mind spinning. Lucas was showing David something on his laptop and I could see Marcus' photos filling the screen in a slideshow format. Lucas, I said quietly. We need to talk. He looked up immediately, reading my expression. What's wrong? The photos are everywhere. Elena says they're being shared by wedding blogs and inspiration accounts. Our private ceremony is apparently going viral. The entire group went quiet. Isabella looked confused. David seemed fascinated. And Marcus looked guilty. I may have uploaded the photos to my professional portfolio, Marcus admitted, with watermarks, of course. But I tagged the location and used wedding hashtags. Some of my followers have large networks, and when they share things, he didn't need to finish the sentence. In the age of social media, beautiful content could spread exponentially, especially content that looked as professionally stunning as Marcus' work. How viral are we talking? Lucas asked. I showed him my phone. The numbers had climbed even higher. 25,000 Instagram followers, notifications too numerous to count, and a missed call from a number I didn't recognize. Maybe this isn't entirely bad, David said thoughtfully. I mean, these are incredible photos of an incredible place. If they inspire other people to have beautiful, authentic weddings instead of expensive productions, isn't that positive? I wanted to agree with him, but all I could think about was Elena's voice, tight with hurt and anger, and my mother discovering through social media that I'd gotten married without telling the family. Our perfect private wedding was becoming a public spectacle. And I had no idea how to control it. But as I looked around at our friends, at Yeppy's beaming face, at Lucas reaching for my hand with understanding and support in his eyes, I realized something important. I didn't actually want to control it. Our wedding had been beautiful because it was authentic, because every choice had been made with love and intention. If the world wanted to celebrate that, maybe that wasn't such a terrible thing after all. By the morning of October 16th, our wedding photos had exploded across every social media platform I could think of. What had started as Marcus sharing a few images to his professional portfolio had become something I'd never experienced before. Genuine viral content that seemed to have a life of its own. Sophia, you need to see this, Lucas said, bringing his laptop to our breakfast table on the villa's terrace. The Mediterranean morning was perfect with golden light streaming through the olive trees and the scent of Yeppie's garden herbs carried on a gentle breeze. It should have been the most peaceful moment of our honeymoon, but instead I was staring at numbers that didn't seem real. Instagram says the ceremony photo has been shared over 50,000 times. Lucas continued, scrolling through analytics I didn't understand. But that's not the crazy part. Gee, there's a crazier part. David uploaded the ceremony footage to YouTube last night. You know, that 10-minute film he put together with all the natural sound and the sunset shots. He said he wanted to create something cinematic for us as a wedding gift. I remember David working on his laptop during our reception, muttering about light levels and audio quality with the same intensity Lucas brought to his documentary projects. He'd shown us a few minutes of rough footage before we all went to bed, and it had been beautiful, more like a short film than typical wedding videography. How many views? I asked, though I was starting to suspect the answer would be overwhelming. Climbing in less than 12 hours, I stared at Lucas, then at the laptop screen showing a view counter that seemed to be updating in real time. 2 million people had watched our wedding ceremony. 2 million strangers had seen the most intimate, personal moment of my life. That can't be right. It's right. Look at the comments. Lucas scrolled down to reveal hundreds of responses in multiple languages. People were calling it the most beautiful wedding they'd ever seen, asking about the location, praising the cinematography, and sharing their own stories about choosing love over family expectations. Many had clearly connected our story to the broader narrative about following your dreams instead of conforming to other people's expectations. This one's my favorite, Lucas said, pointing to a comment from someone in Australia. I've been planning a huge expensive wedding to make my parents happy, but this made me realize I'd rather have something meaningful with just the people who truly support us. Thank you for showing what authentic love looks like. Despite my anxiety about the publicity, that comment made me smile. If our choice to prioritize authenticity over family politics was inspiring other couples to think differently about their own celebrations, maybe the viral attention wasn't entirely unwelcome. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Elena's name on the screen. I should take this, I said to Lucas, walking to a quiet corner of the terrace. Sophia, what is happening? Elena's voice was strained, almost panicked. Do you know that your wedding video has been shared by Good Morning America and some British talk show? Mom is getting calls from reporters asking for comments about the family rift that inspired your escape to Italy. Reporters. The word hit me like cold water. I'd been focused on the social media aspect of our viral moment, but I hadn't considered that traditional media might pick up the story. What kind of reporters? Entertainment reporters mostly, but also some lifestyle bloggers who are treating this like some kind of fairy tale romance. They're calling it the wedding that broke the internet and love wins in Sicily. There's speculation about why your family wasn't there and people are creating their own narratives about family drama and romantic rebellion. I closed my eyes trying to process the implications. Our private moment of choosing love over family dysfunction was being turned into entertainment content for millions of strangers. Elena, I never intended for any of this to happen. But you're not exactly stopping it either, are you? She had a point. David had asked permission before uploading the video to YouTube, and I'd said yes without thinking about potential consequences. Marcus had been sharing photos with my knowledge and consent. At any point, I could have asked them to stop or made our content private. Would it change anything if I did stop it now? Elena was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, smaller. Probably not. It's already everywhere. Mom showed me a Facebook post from someone in our own neighborhood sharing your photos and talking about how romantic it was that you escaped family drama to find true love in Italy. Our neighborhood. People who knew our family personally were now seeing our wedding story framed as an escape from family drama, which wasn't entirely inaccurate, but was much more public than I'd ever intended. How was your wedding? I asked, trying to shift the conversation towards something positive. It was beautiful. Everything went perfectly. The photos are gorgeous. Bradley was crying happy tears. And the sunset ceremony on the beach was everything I'd dreamed of. Elena paused, but everyone kept asking where you were, and now everyone knows where you were. The hurt in her voice was unmistakable, and I felt a familiar pang of guilt. Despite everything that had led to this moment, I didn't actually want my sister to feel overshadowed or upstaged on her wedding day. I'm sorry that the attention on our wedding is affecting your celebration. Are you though? Really? The question caught me off guard with its directness. Elena, what do you mean? I mean, you chose the exact same day as my wedding in one of the most photogenic places on earth with professional photographers documenting everything. And now it's getting more attention than any wedding I've ever seen. Are you really sorry about that, or is this exactly what you wanted? I thought about her question seriously, trying to be honest with myself about my motivations. Had I wanted our wedding to overshadow Elena's? Had some part of me hoped that choosing Sicily over Miami, intimacy over spectacle, would prove a point about what really mattered? I wanted to have a beautiful wedding with Lucas in a place that felt magical to us, I said finally. I wanted to prioritize our happiness over family expectations for once in my life. But I didn't plan for it to go viral, and I didn't want it to take anything away from your day. But if you had to choose, Elena pressed, between making peace with the family and having your fairy tale wedding that the whole world is now obsessing over, which would you choose? I looked out at Yeppy's garden, where Lucas was helping Isabella's children chase butterflies between the olive trees. I thought about the years of being made to feel like I was too much, too inconvenient, too awkward for my own family's comfort. I'd choose the fairy tale, I said quietly. Every time. By our third day in Sicily, the YouTube video of our wedding had reached 20 million views. David was fielding calls from production companies interested in his cinematography work. Marcus had booked 6 new high-end wedding clients based on our photos alone. And Yeppy was getting inquiries from couples around the world wanting to host their own ceremonies at the villa. I think I created a monster, Yeppy said cheerfully as he served us breakfast on the terrace. 3 more couples want a book for next month. The Sicilian tourism office called to ask about featuring the villa in their promotional materials. Everyone wants their own Sophia and Lucas wedding. I should have felt guilty about commercializing our private moment, but honestly, I was thrilled that Yeppy was benefiting from the attention. He'd put so much heart into making our day perfect. And if our viral wedding could bring more business to his family property, that felt like a positive outcome. Any regrets? Lucas asked, echoing the question he'd posed on our wedding morning. About Yeppy getting more bookings? None at all. I meant about the publicity, about your family. I considered the question while watching the morning light dance across the water below us. In the past 3 days, I'd received dozens of interview requests, thousands of social media messages, and exactly 0 direct communications from my parents. Elena had texted a few times, but our conversations had been strained and brief. I keep thinking about something Yeppy said on our first night. I told Lucas that love is simple, but families are complicated. I spent so many years trying to uncomplicate my family relationships by making myself smaller, more convenient, less threatening, but it never worked. They were always going to find reasons why I was too much. And now I'm married to you in one of the most beautiful places on earth. Our love story has inspired thousands of other couples, and Jusby is booked solid through next spring. If my family can't find a way to be happy about that, it says more about them than it does about me. Lucas smiled and reached for my hand across the breakfast table. I love this version of you. Confident, unapologetic, choosing joy over guilt. I love this version of me, too. My phone buzzed with a notification from YouTube. The wedding video had hit 30 million views overnight, and the comments section had become a fascinating glimpse into how strangers were interpreting our story. Many viewers had clearly researched the background, piecing together from various social media clues that I hadn't been invited to my sister's wedding and had chosen to create my own celebration instead. The comments ranged from supportive, good for her for choosing herself, to critical, family should always come first, to practical, "Can someone please share the villa's booking information?" But the overwhelming response was positive, with people sharing their own stories about difficult family dynamics and finding the courage to prioritize their own happiness. "Look at this one," I said, showing Lucas a comment that had received over 1,000 likes. "I've been watching this video every morning for 3 days. I'm getting married next month and my fiancé and I decided to cancel our big expensive reception and use the money for a honeymoon in Italy instead. If Sophia can choose love over family drama, we can choose intimacy over obligation. Thank you for showing us what's possible. We're accidentally starting a revolution," Lucas laughed. "A revolution of people choosing authenticity over expectations. I can live with that." Around noon, David approached us with his laptop and an expression I couldn't read. "So," he said, sitting down at our table. "I have news. Good news, I think, but it's also a lot. More interview requests?" I asked. "The Ellen DeGeneres show wants to fly us to Los Angeles to talk about the wedding and the viral response, but that's not the big news." "What's the big news?" David turned his laptop screen toward us. "The wedding video hit 50 million views an hour ago. It's trending on YouTube in 12 countries. And Netflix called my agent this morning." "Netflix?" "They want to do a documentary about viral wedding videos and how social media is changing the way couples think about marriage. Our video would be the centerpiece, but they'd also interview other couples who've had similar experiences. Think of it as a cultural examination of authenticity versus spectacle in modern relationships." I stared at David, then at Lucas, trying to process what he was telling us. Netflix wanted to make a documentary about our wedding, about the choice we'd made to prioritize our happiness over my family's comfort. "That's incredible," Lucas said slowly. "Also terrifying." "What would be involved?" I asked. "Interviews with both of you about your decision to get married in Sicily, the family dynamics that led to that choice, and the viral response. They'd also want to film some follow-up footage here at the villa, interview Yeppy about his perspective, maybe talk to some of the couples who've booked weddings here because of your video, a Netflix documentary about us, about the choice that had seemed so simple when we made it, but had apparently resonated with millions of people around the world. Can we think about it?" Lucas asked. "Of course, but they want an answer relatively soon. The cultural moment around your video is happening now, and documentaries work best when they capture things in real time." After David left us alone to discuss his news, Lucas and I walked down through Jusby's gardens toward the sea. The afternoon was warm and perfect with the kind of golden light that had made our wedding photos so magical. It was hard to believe that just a week ago, I'd been in Portland listening to my mother explain why I wasn't welcome at Elena's wedding. A documentary feels like making this whole thing even more public. I said eventually it does, but maybe that's not entirely bad. If our story can help other people think differently about family expectations and personal choices, isn't that worth something? I thought about all the comments and messages we'd received, about couples reconsidering their own wedding plans, about people finding the courage to choose authenticity over obligation. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think," Lucas said, stopping to face me with the Mediterranean sparkling behind him, "that we've already changed our own lives. If we want to help other people change theirs, this might be how we do it." We said yes to the Netflix documentary. 2 weeks later, back in Portland, I found myself sitting across from a producer named Jessica in a coffee shop downtown, explaining the family dynamics that had led to our spontaneous Sicilian wedding. The YouTube video had reached 75 million views and showed no signs of slowing down. Yeppy's villa was booked solid for the next 18 months, and Sophia and Lucas weddings had become a trending search term for couples looking for intimate destination ceremony inspiration. "What I find fascinating about your story," Jessica said, adjusting her recording equipment, "is how it taps into this broader cultural conversation about authenticity versus spectacle, about choosing personal happiness over family expectations. Your video has sparked thousands of conversations online about what weddings should really be about." "We never intended to start a cultural conversation," I said. We just wanted to get married somewhere beautiful without having to manage other people's emotions about our choices. But that's exactly why it resonated. You made a decision that prioritized your own joy, and you did it without apology or explanation. In a world where people are constantly performing their lives for others, that kind of authenticity is rare. The irony wasn't lost on me that our attempt to escape public scrutiny had resulted in more public attention than I'd ever imagined possible. But the attention felt different from the family drama we'd been trying to avoid. Strangers who connected with our story were celebrating our choice rather than criticizing it, supporting our decision rather than demanding we change it. "Have you spoken to your family since returning from Italy?" Jessica asked. It was the question I'd been dreading. The answer was complicated and painful in ways I wasn't sure I wanted to share with Netflix's audience. "My sister and I have texted a few times. My parents and I haven't spoken directly since before the wedding." "How does that feel?" "I thought about Elena's last text sent 3 days earlier. I saw the Netflix announcement. I'm happy that good things are happening for you, even if I don't understand any of this." I thought about my parents' silence, which felt both hurtful and liberating. I thought about the relief of not having to manage their reactions to every choice Lucas and I made about our new life together. "It feels sad," I said honestly. "But it also feels necessary. I spent 27 years trying to make myself acceptable to people who were never going to fully accept me. At some point, you have to choose your own happiness over other people's approval. Even when those people are your family, especially when those people are your family." The Netflix interviews took place over several days with Jessica and her crew, documenting not just our story, but the broader phenomenon of couples choosing intimacy over spectacle for their weddings. They interviewed Yepi via video call from Sicily, spoke with Marcus about the photography that had made our wedding go viral, and talked to 3 couples who had booked their own villa weddings after seeing our video. One couple, Sarah and Michael from Chicago, had can-led their planned ballroom reception for 200 guests and were flying to Italy instead for a ceremony with just their parents and siblings. Watching Sophia and Lucas's video made us realize we were planning our wedding for everyone except ourselves. Sarah explained to Jessica's cameras. "We were so focused on what looked impressive and what would make our families happy that we forgot to think about what would make us happy." Another couple, Jessica and David from Austin, had decided to elope entirely after their families couldn't agree on wedding details. The viral response to the Sicily wedding showed us that people actually celebrate authenticity over obligation. David said, "We realized we didn't need our family's permission to have the wedding we wanted." Hearing these stories made me feel something I hadn't expected. Pride, not just in our own choices, but in the ripple effect those choices had created. Our decision to prioritize love over family politics had given other couples permission to make similar choices. The Netflix documentary titled Love Over Obligation: How One Viral Wedding Changed Everything premiered 3 months after our Sicily ceremony. By that time, our original wedding video had reached 120 million views on YouTube, making it one of the most watched wedding videos in internet history. The documentary's release brought another wave of media attention, but this time I felt prepared for it. Lucas and I appeared on several talk shows, did magazine interviews, and even spoke at a conference about social media and cultural change. Throughout it all, we maintained the same message. That choosing authenticity over expectation wasn't just about weddings, but about how we decided to live our entire lives. The most unexpected outcome of our viral fame was a book deal. A publisher approached us about writing a guide for couples navigating family expectations around weddings, relationships, and major life decisions. The book, Your Day Your Way, Choosing Love Over Obligation, became a bestseller and led to speaking opportunities around the country. Through it all, my family remained largely silent. Elena and I exchanged occasional messages, but the relationship felt permanently changed. My parents never reached out directly, though I heard through mutual friends that they'd watched the Netflix documentary and found it hurtful but well produced. The silence should have devastated me, but instead it felt like confirmation that I'd made the right choice. People who truly loved me would have found ways to celebrate my happiness, even if they didn't understand my decisions. The fact that my family couldn't do that said more about their limitations than mine. As I sat in our new Los Angeles apartment a year after the Sicily wedding, editing photos from our latest project, and listening to Lucas work on a documentary about couples who'd met through our viral video, I felt something I'd never experienced before. Complete peace with my choices. Our viral wedding had started as an act of quiet rebellion, a decision to choose joy over obligation. It had become something much larger. A cultural moment that gave thousands of people permission to prioritize their own happiness over other people's expectations. The aftermath revealed the true character of everyone involved. My parents and Elena, faced with evidence of their own behavior, chose defensiveness over reflection and silence over reconciliation. They lost themselves in their own bitterness, missing out on celebrating genuine love and success. Meanwhile, Lucas and I built a life filled with purpose, creativity, and the kind of authentic relationships I'd always craved, but never known how to find. Looking back on that moment in my mother's kitchen when she told me I'd make Elena's wedding awkward, I realized she'd given me the greatest gift possible, the push I needed to finally choose myself.